go about introducing the speaker for today. And I want to welcome the crowd on the YouTube as well to tuning in for the 170th episode of Empowerment Talks. Now, today's guest speaker is Ian Windle. He is an award-winning TEDx and Vistage professional speaker, executive coach, team builder, group chair at Vistage International UK, co-host of Gritty Leaders Club podcast, and author of forthcoming book, The Leadership Map. Now he speaks around the world about the working life, about how do you create the high-performing teams. And on the show today, he'll be speaking about a very interesting topics that all of us are either part of the team or are leading a team, and in both the ways you can contribute yourself to create that high performance, because that is how people measure your intellect, measure your work style, or whatever. How is your performance? And today it's a very interesting topic. I am very much close to this topics, and over to you, Ian, to take us through this session and take us through how do we actually go about creating high performance teams.
Thank you, Yash. It's great to be on the session today. I'm going to give you some stories, give you some of my experience, and give you a model that will allow you to take away something very clear in which to create, sustain, develop a high-performing team. But let me start with the first thing, which is most important. We're all parts of teams. They could be sports teams, they could be business teams, you could be a leadership team, it could be a team that is your work team, it could be outside of your organization. We're all parts of teams. We find it very difficult to function in the worlds we live in today without actually being part of a team. And the key thing we have to start with is, what is the purpose of that team? We have to have a purpose that binds the team together. Some goals that bind the team together, perhaps a vision that binds that team together. So the most important thing any team needs to start with is, why does it exist and where is it going? And you need to co-create that ideally so that everyone buys into why the team is there. You may be joining a team after it has already existed, in which case you should be joining it for a real reason, that you'd be passionate about how this team is going to succeed and where it wants to be. So that's the first thing. And let me give you some examples. I mean, I'm a huge sports fan, and it's very easy to look at sports teams because sports teams tend to have very clear goals, very clear purpose, very clear visions. And of course, every time they go on the pitch or on the court, there's an analysis of how well they've done. So it's very easy and very useful to look at sports teams and take great comparisons from them. Let me start with rugby, which some of you may be familiar, some less familiar. But the Great All Blacks team, which has been around for a long time, and actually, if you look at teams across the world in terms of sports, it is the most successful team ever. They've got the highest winning ratio of any team. And their purpose is to continue the legacy. Isn't that a strong purpose? Continue the legacy. If you become an All Black and you go into that team and you put on that shirt, you have to leave that shirt in a better position than you took it on. And the All Blacks are more than a rugby team. It's a culture. You're playing for the nation. And so it has amazing purpose and emotional connection if you become a part of that team. They also, in terms of their vision, what do they want? Well, it's very simple with the All Blacks. They want to win every game, and they want to be the #1 team in the world. And if they lose a game, they come off the pitch and they analyze what went well and how they could have done things better. And they take that back into their team and they work on it. There's a wonderful book by James Kerr, if you want to understand the All Blacks and how their 15 leadership principles, and it talks about that purpose in that book. A couple more sports themes I'll talk about before we flip into business. One is the Indian cricket team, and of course their vision at the moment is to win the next T20, the World T20 in 2021. And I know from being a great cricket fan and played from my youth what a passion that is for India, and how important it is to win and be truly successful. Again, a bit like the All Blacks, it's more than a sport, and they have a real purpose, a real emotional connection. And that's what you need to try and bring into your businesses. Start with that purpose, that emotional connection, and then figure out what the vision for this team is. The third one's really interesting. I want to talk about briefly, the Chicago Bulls. There's a wonderful thing on Netflix about Michael Jordan. And I'm not a basketball player, never have been, never picked up a basketball. But if you look at Michael Jordan and the Chicago Bulls, amazing sports team. And again, if you go back and analyze really what connects them, what do they look at? There are two key things, and that is winning championships and providing superior entertainment. Isn't that interesting? At the heart of what they do, it's not only playing basketball, it's to give entertainment in the way they do it to the fans. So let's move on and look at the rest of the model. It's clear for any business and any sports team that you must start with purpose and vision, these two equal things. Purpose, why do we exist? Vision, where do we want to go? You've got to get those things nailed for your team. But the next thing is, what you want in any team is you want to evolve and you want to get better. But the only way to do that is to do two things. First of all, you need to build up trust amongst the members of the team. Because especially now, if we flip into business, you want people to try new things. You want people to take a bit of a risk, a bit of a managed risk, to try new things and involve that team and take it to a new level. So you've got to build what Patrick Lencioni, in his great book, The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, would call vulnerability-based trust. Trust so deep that you're prepared to be vulnerable when you come into the group meeting. Now, why is that important? Because what you want people to do is come into your team meeting and show where they get things right and where they get things wrong. So where things don't go so well, you want people to come in and feel open enough, trusting enough to the group to say, do you know what, I didn't do that so well. And you want people to come in and help them get through that. Now, the only way somebody's going to come into a group meeting and show that they're open and they're trustworthy is if the leader of the team creates a level of safety in the team. So that's actually the place to start after a purpose and a vision. The only way you're going to get into vulnerability-based trust and a really trusting environment so people will share is to create safety. So safety is actually number two. Purpose and vision, number one. Safety is number two. How do you create safety? Well, you show that I've got your back. No matter what you say, I'm not going to have personal digs with you. I'm not going to attack you verbally. Your job is protected. Don't worry. I want to hear what you have to say. That's the most important thing for me to do as a leader. Create this air of safety around the group. Simon Sinek talks about that in many of his books, about a leader's job is to create safety in the room for people to be themselves, to bring their whole selves to work. So you've got purpose as number one, safety as number two, and then vulnerability-based trust as number three. Now, this thing about vulnerability is a strange one, isn't it? Because sometimes we think vulnerability is a weakness. We see it, funnily enough, we see it as a strength often in others. We look at others and we say, wow, that took a lot of challenge, a lot of strength to be vulnerable over something. But actually, it's the biggest strength we can have, is to be vulnerable, to show up, because that's where we learn and grow. And if we're going to grow in a business, if we're going to take a managed risk, that's when we learn and we grow and we develop and we get better. Now, once we've got trust in the room, and this is the platform for a high-performing team, once we've got trust in the room, then we can go to what really starts to change a team, and that's challenge. We want people to challenge each other, to be challenged themselves, to be challenged by the goals, objectives, and things they're working on, and to move the business forward. But what we don't want is challenge that attacks people, the challenge that is personal. So we've got to get challenge into the room, but we must get the right kind of challenge in the room. What often happens in teams who don't have the vulnerability-based trust is they do two things. You get the artificial harmony, where people say, yes, I agree with you, but they don't really agree with you. And that builds up to the point that sometimes then you get a personal dig. You get people saying, well, I think that's a crazy idea. Somehow teams have got to get to the point where they get real challenge, where people take no offense whatsoever. It's a tension that exists in the best meetings you'll ever have when you focus on the real issues and you get positive challenge in the room. Because only through positive challenge do you tackle the real issues and you start progressing as a team. So let's just recap where we got to up to challenge. We've got a purpose and we've got a vision. We've got safety created so that people can feel at home, they can feel comfortable, they can voice an opinion. We've got vulnerability-based trust, where people will feel open enough because of the safety to say what they actually feel, to open up and put it on the table, to know that nobody's going to engage in a personal dig against them. And then we've got the real part of a team where you get that challenge on the subject that matters so much, about the objectives, about the goals, about where you're going to go with this team, about the new product or the new service that you're bringing into a business. And you get a proper conversation around that, not people holding back, not a corridor conversation, not something happening outside of the meeting, but something happening within the meeting that adds real value to the team and moves the team forward. When you've had great challenge, when you've had that great debate, then you start getting the commitment to what the team agree. Because it's what you want, of course, is a team committing to all the decisions they make. And people are only going to commit when they've been part of that conversation. So as Lencioni says in many of his books, 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, as I've mentioned, one of the best ones, is if you don't weigh into a conversation, you don't buy into the output. If you don't weigh in, you don't buy in. So we want people to get engaged in the challenging conversations, and then they will commit to the output from the team. They'll commit to the actions coming out. And that's where you get the accountability. Because as soon as people commit, the next team meeting, you can hold them accountable. Did they achieve what they said they were going to achieve? The final output from any team is team results. Not individual results, team results. That's why it's so important when you come back to where we started about having a purpose and a vision, or a purpose and some real clear goals, is those clear goals, that clear vision has to be for the whole team, not for the individuals. The danger is in teams is I'm going to protect my area of the business and you're going to protect your area of the business. So we have to have created team goals, and the team is the most important thing. What are we aiming for? What makes us better? Not what individually can we do to look better in each other's eyes, ego driven. No, what can the team create? So the team outcomes is the most important thing in the middle. So let me just summarize again. What have we got here? We've got purpose and vision to start with. Why are we here? What are we trying to create? Secondly, we've got safety. Create that safety so people feel at home, to open up, to be vulnerable, to say what they really think without fear. Then we've got vulnerability-based trust, which we must build up in our team. And the leader must always go first. The leader of that team must always start, showing that they're not perfect, because unless you do, no one else is going to around that table. After trust, we go to challenge. That's the fourth one. We get great challenge over the real issues that are going to move this team forward towards its goals, its objectives, and its vision. Then we get the commitment. Because once we get involved in the challenging conversations, we'll commit to them, we'll commit to the output, we'll commit to getting the actions done. And that's where the accountability will also follow-up meetings. And then we'll get real results, which are team results, going back to the vision and the goals we've set. So that's the model. It's a pretty simple model. It's got 5 key parts to it. I hope they're clear. I hope I've summarized them for you. And I hope this helps you to create and sustain high-performing teams. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ian, for 1 second. 1 second. Thank you very much, Ian, for this wonderful summarized version of how to create the high performance student. And I'm pretty sure you talk much more detail in this in your podcast that you host, and then you go up. Now you're writing the book about it. So that again, that's something that I will be particularly looking forward for, and I'm particularly fascinated on how people work and how you can drive those performances in this team. Now I'll straight away jump into the Q&A with you, and my first question is about his you have given this knowledge, you must have given this knowledge to a lot of people, but when it comes to the practicality of this knowledge, when it comes to the overall execution of this knowledge into the organizations, and I'm talking about the vivid organizations, not some specific organization, how do you go about doing that? Because it becomes really hard to align the value. You may align the values, but when your day-to-day challenges become so much in a business that you kind of, okay, I want to get this thing done and I want to just get rid of it. So a lot of people who work on the 9 to 5 jobs are want to get their 9 to 5 done, and they're just like, okay, it may end up something with my vision someday. How do you go about communicating this message to them?
Well, I think a team can only be created by a team. A team can't be created by one person trying to do it all for the team. And so the best place to start, you want to get buy-in and commitment to what this team wants to achieve. So you've got to get the team talking about regularly why they exist, what they're trying to do, what their purpose is. And if you can get everyone involved in that conversation, that becomes critical, because then people will come in the morning and go, I want to work for this team. This team has a real purpose. I understand why it's here, and I want to be part of this team. You've got to get that emotional connection. That's the first place to start.
I love the fact that you mentioned about the emotional connection, and that puts me up to my second question, that your when it comes to the emotional connection to it, and I particularly distinguish it as, then, like, let's say you have a personal life and you have a professional life. Now when the emotions come into the play, it's more has to do, like for me particularly, it has more to do with the personal life than to my professional life. If those values don't align, if you are doing something that you are meant to do because you are paid to do, okay, but you don't want to do it, so your values of your personal values doesn't get aligned with the values of the company, but you still want to stick with the company. And I'm pretty sure a lot of people here and who are watching us on YouTube go through this situation. What do you say to those people?
Well, that's a hard one, because you have a choice to make. I left a company which I was the MD of their UK arm for 9 years, and eventually it didn't work for me. I felt that I wasn't quite aligned with where it was going, and what I would do. They're a great company, by the way, but it wasn't right that we kept on being together. I needed to go and do something else. Maybe it was a timing issue. So I think you have a choice, and I think we should never forget we always have a choice. And I think sometimes we underplay the fact that we are all incredible human beings who have huge amount to offer, and we're never born to do one thing either. So I think we have a choice to do the thing we're doing, and I think if we're going to do it, we have to put everything into it. Maybe we try and change it from the inside. If we disagree with the values, maybe we try and bring some of the values in we think should be there. But ultimately, it's very difficult to get up in the morning and go and work for an organization or a team where your values are not congruent with their values. That becomes really hard. And I think
I think it is hard, but majority of the world is doing that. So is it that you want to say that most of the people in the world are into this sphere of are living a hard life?
Well, it's as I say, we have a choice to make. We can say that doesn't matter to me. I'm going to go into work, do a job, get paid, go home. And in fact, we always hear this, don't we? That some people, they work to live or they live to work. And some people make a different choice. They say, do you know what? I'm going to go in, I'm going to earn some money, I'm going to come home and I'm going to have a great family life. I'm going to play the sport I like. I'm going to have the friends I like. But the only reason I go to work is to earn some money to do that. And I have to respect that if that's what people have. But I think sometimes my view of people in the world is often they have way more to offer than they believe. And sometimes this is about personal belief that I can go and do something else that's going to be fulfilling. The potential people have that needs to be unlocked is phenomenal. And I think we undervalue sometimes how good we really are to go and do the thing that will really make us feel rewarded and fulfilled.
Okay. So you did mention that most of the people earn to do the things that they really want to do in their life. The other side of the spectrum is when you are doing the things that you love to do, you're passionate about it, but you become so exhausted doing that thing. I'm talking about the entrepreneurs, and I'm like, the initial grind or the initial hustle of being an entrepreneur. It's not that fancy of how Mark Zuckerberg or how those people fascinated about it. The initial grind and the initial hustle of every entrepreneur, it's like you forget about the things that you wanted to make money for. I can put it in such a way that it takes the toll of your life. And have you encountered that? And if you have encountered it, then what's the life after that?
Well, one of my key words is choice. You can't have everything. And
Wow.
sometimes we look at other people and we think they have got everything. We see entrepreneurs who've got huge amounts of money and they're driving a great car and they run a big company. And then we find out they're on 4 marriages and they've got dysfunctional relationships with friends. And it's never perfect for anyone. I think that's the truth. And when I coach people, I work with them on a balanced life. My view is you don't have to sacrifice home life with business life. And in fact, you might be heading for an early grave if you do. And you have to figure out what success means for you. Is it money and a Ferrari, or is it other things that matter to you? Is it relationships at the heart of your life that matter to you? Because for most people, richness isn't from money. That's my fundamental belief.
I do agree to it, but living into the practical world of how the world thinks and how I as a generation think, or me as a majority of it, like if you have money, you can go about the things that you really love to do. And that is what has created so much of bias around when you look at the happiness in the world about the money side, right? You have the money, you can buy happiness. You can all of these things. Like out of 10 people, 8 will be like, okay, I want to have a promotion or something for it. Money plays a big factor there. Now I want to understand what is the history behind this. Like when is this shift happened? In which decade, or it's centuries ago this decade happened, that who is much more prosper or who is much more money wise is good has been more successful people, because we have been now conditioned to think in such way. Had it been a long history behind it?
I think it's interesting. There is a happiness index that's published every year. You may know of it.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
and they look at the countries in the world that are the happiest countries. Scandinavia comes out at the top most times when they do it. And if you look at Scandinavia, they have a very balanced life. I work for a Swedish company. They go home at 5. Unlike in the UK where people work far longer hours, they go home at 5. They come in late. They have amazing social lives. They indulge in sport. They have a very balanced life. And all the reports show and all the research shows that above a certain amount of income, you don't create any more happiness. You just get more stuff. You just get a bigger version of what you had before. Now, that's not the same as poverty or people who are much, much poorer. Then they are definitely not as happy as people who have a certain amount which fulfills them, which gives them what they want in life. A roof over their head, a car, schools for their kids, food, some holidays, etc. So there is this balance, but beyond a certain income level, the research shows there is no more happiness to be had. It is just a bigger version of what you have. And looking at the happiness index really
I
shows
think
it.
it's more problems, you get into more legal troubles, you more get into more country troubles and all sort of other things.
Yeah, I mean,
You come under the radar.
yeah, that's the way it is, and I think we have to come to terms with that as people, as human beings.
Uh, you mentioned about creating high performance teams,
Mm.
and you did mention about the 5 things that makes the team. That is the purpose, that is the safety, then you have the commitment, accountability, and then you get the real results. I want to tweak it up a bit. What happens for a low performing team? What has been the primary reasons why a team don't perform?
So I think the primary reason a team don't perform is they don't trust each other. So in fact, a team that doesn't perform are a group of individuals who come together who don't really know each other well, who haven't unpacked who they really are, who haven't understood why they're there, who don't trust the guy opposite them, who aren't willing to give resources to the person across the table. They want to keep them for themselves. So it becomes a group of dysfunctional people who are only in it for themselves, for their own ego, for their own betterment. And the only way a team really works is where you break that down and say, the only way you individually win is if we all win. So that's where it breaks down. If people don't really trust each other, they don't really know each other, they don't really get on with each other. Teams can't be created overnight. They take a while. You have to get to know the people across the table. You have to understand who they are, where they came from, what makes them tick, and then you can start to build up a level of trust. And then when they put something on the table about what they're doing, you say, hey, look, let me have a chat with you. Maybe I can help you. And that's where teams really start to work.
Now, again, I'll ask a very basic and a very relatable question, and I just love asking them, but it just comes into my mind. Like, I'll take you to a scenario in an office space, because when I speak about a team, like, not all of us are professional players or something, but all of us work professionally for some firms. So I want to take you to a corporate environment where a team of 10 are there, and they have to work together, but at the same time they want that one promotion that is there for 5 of the people who are equally eligible for that promotion.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Okay. And this has been the case scenarios for like every other employer that you have, that one of the senior leadership positions are not available for everybody into the teams that are below that. It's a pyramid, right? So you have to work, you have to build that trust, you have to do it, but at the same time you would have to kick somebody out to be at that position. So how does that work? Because you know what I mean, right? Like,
Yeah.
I'm working with the same team, but at the same time, you have this that I have to be above him, or I have to perform, or I have to be. Forget about performing. I have to make other people see that I'm performing the most. That's why I'm being promoted.
I think the interesting thing is there's a feeling which I think doesn't help people, where they feel that the only way in life is to win is that somebody else loses. And I fundamentally don't believe in that.
I love that.
So I
I love
think
that.
in a team environment, if you think about it, if there's a promotion to be had, but maybe there's a limited number, there always are, aren't they? There's a limited number of promotions. There's too many people to fill those positions. So if I'm going to get that promotion, the higher up in an organization I go, the more I'm probably going to be needed to be good with people. The more I'm going to be needed to be good at getting on with people, managing people, getting the most out of people, getting great relationships. So if I'm seen in that group as being the one who people look to, who being the one who people trust, it's not saying that what I wouldn't do is show how good I am at things, because that would be letting the team down. If I didn't show you as a team member, I'm really good at what my function is. But if I also show in that team, do you know what? I bring this team together, I share things, I challenge people well, I help them. That's going to put me in the best light in the team and give me the best chance of promotion. So I think you can do both.
That's a great answer. And I love the way you started this answer, that the myth around the world is if you want to win is you have to make other people lose, where there can be many other ways to lose. Now, my second question is about the hierarchy that we have, or the
Mm,
different sort of things that, like, levels that we have in a corporate. Or let me take you to a shop owner, or
mm,
the
mm,
scenario over there. Now, there is this shop owner who runs a shop and he has a team of 5 people below him. Now, there is this ownership and there is this, the people who are working for this guy.
mm, mm,
Now, he wants to be part of that team to make them motivated and all sort of things. But these people have a hindrance that why does he's getting so much involved in us? Why does, he's a boss at the end of the day? I'm not really asking about from the boss perspective, but from the juniors, when the seniors become involved into what the day-to-day works have been. And senior is doing it with a good motive, but it doesn't visualize it because it just like, he's the owner, why is he coming in? And micromanagement, like you can say it, if I can say it. So is micromanagement a good thought or a good thing in the world today, and what's your thoughts on it?
I think one of the most important things a leader can be is to be a good coach. And there's a big difference between being a coach and micromanaging. So micromanaging would be coming in and almost doing it for you, pointing little imperfections out, saying, oh, you should do it like this, and I wouldn't do it like that. And people feel they haven't got any autonomy, they can't grow, they can't develop. They're sort of looking over your shoulder. Whereas if you're being a coach, it's a very different way of developing people and growing people. A coach would come in and say, I want you to achieve this. Tell me what ideas you've got for achieving it. And then the person would say, well, I could do this, or I could do that, and I could do that. And then the coach would say, all right, tell me how you'd do the first thing you told me. How would you make that happen? And they'd say, well, I'd make it happen by doing these 3 or 4 things. Okay, well, tell me about the first and the third thing, because I really like those. Tell me how you'd make those bits happen. And when would you do them? And they'd say, well, I'd start them tomorrow and I might need your help and I probably could finish them by 5 o'clock. Well, that's great. So crack on. If you need any more help, come and see me. Now, as a coach, all I've done there is I've asked questions, but I've actually made you feel you own it.
Yep.
And that's a very big difference from micromanagement, where I might say, here's a job, go and do it, and I look over your shoulder. And that's just a horrible way of being managed. It's much better to say, you take some ownership. And what the coaching approach does is it grows people because it forces them to think and then own the outcome.
So there is this interesting question that came onto my chat, and this is about the homegrown businesses and the home teams. Like you are part of, yourself, suppose you're a father-daughter relation or father-son, and you're into the same business. So you have this professionalism and you have this personal life at this time, and they end up forming good teams. But what is the question is, how do we manage those sort of things? Because if both of the things are at stake, do you advise doing it, or how do you actually do it?
Well, I work with quite a few family businesses in the UK, and actually they are the hardest businesses to work with because you can't get away from the family, and it's important. It's almost impossible to divorce the two. I've seen the father owner come in when he said, oh, well, I'm just going to oversee it. I'm not going to interfere. And then they'll come in and they'll make a big decision. And because they're the 80% owner of the business and it's their baby. I don't think there's an easy answer. I think one of the things is to try and get some structure at the top of the business, to try and get some very good external people in who will help to persuade the owner, the family, that actually it's being well run by a group below perhaps the person who started it. And everyone has a role to play. But this is the hardest thing for small and medium-sized businesses and even big businesses is, the guy who started it, the family who started it, can't take their hands out of it. And that sometimes that's a great thing. Sometimes they're brilliant people, but for the most, you have to hand over at some point. And the biggest thing for a lot of people I coach is, what's their legacy going to be? How are they going to hand this over? What shape is it going to be in? Who are the people who are really capable underneath them of taking it on to the next stage? And so at some point, you've got to persuade them that they're not going to be there forever. And there needs to be another professional layer that can take this on. But it takes time and energy and hope and prayer.
I am loving this conversation, and I would go and listen to all the podcasts that you have shot, because they must be around the same realm. So I just want to get a brief about what do you talk about in your podcast, what it is about, what sort of people, is it about a conversational style, or what do you actually go about speaking in your podcast?
Oh, it's kind of you to ask. I co-host it with another executive who's run several businesses. It's called the Gritty Leaders Club. And we have a theme behind it, which is leadership is not sexy, it's not glorified, it's not just wonderful every day. Leaders have to work really hard, they have real problems, and it's gritty and it's hard and it's difficult. And we get underneath some of the real problems and challenges leaders have day in, day out, like setting a vision, like engaging their people, like getting promoted, like the paradoxes they have in their world about just getting people to put their effort into a business. And so we have guests on who are CEOs of businesses, we have speakers on, and we have book reviews, and we challenge each other. We don't agree on everything, my co-host and I, which is good because we challenge each other in our thinking too.
That's how the vulnerability and putting up into the other person into the place where he's not comfortable. That's what excites the audience.
Exactly.
So,
Exactly.
okay. So, and what about the book that is coming up, the leadership performance? So what's the name of the book?
It's called the Leadership Map.
The leadership map. So, is
Uh,
it all your experiences boiled down into those pages over there?
well, it's started actually. I'm a speaker on leadership in the UK and internationally, and I started speaking about various aspects of leadership. And as I evolved that, it turned into a number of talks, and those number of talks then turned into a book. So in fact, the book has 12 chapters, and it covers all the areas I cover in my talks. And that starts with purpose, vision, values, and strategy. It then goes on to people and teams, and it then goes on to strategy execution. So there are three main parts, and it basically, my view is, if you pick up this book and read it, it gives you enough to run a successful business. It has all the main components in there.
So you listen to his podcast, you listen to his book, and then your business is all set to shoot off. And do listen to his TED Talk, because I was listening to the TED Talks before this, and I'm really impressed by the way he delivered the TED Talk. So you can go out and search it on YouTube, or I'll put it on my YouTube link below in the description. So thank you very much, Ian, for coming on the show and speaking to us. Just before we actually complete the YouTube segment, I want to ask you, what is your experience coming to Empowerment Talks, from the way when we approached you to coming on this show and speaking about it, and some good words about this platform?
Well, first of all, thank you. It's been great to come on to the show. It's wonderful how many people you've had on here in the time, and I love your purpose. Going back to what I was saying about teams, you have a really strong purpose at the heart of what you're doing. I think taking talks to people around the world is a hard thing to do, and I think the way you approached me was absolutely in the right way. I was delighted to do it, and I wish you every success in the future. I think the key to our lives is learning and growth and being supported in that journey, and you're doing that extremely well. So I wish you every luck in the future.
Thank you very much, Ian, for this wonderful. I'll just sending the links to the people so that they can connect with you. So here's the link of Ian in the chat box right now. So you can connect with him on LinkedIn. And thank you very much, all the audience who are watching us on YouTube. And do subscribe to our YouTube channel if you want to watch these conversations daily, because this is the daily conversation